Now that we understand what the pulse of music is, let's take a minute to show you how it would look if you were to read it as written music. Here's a picture of the musical staff. You'll notice that there is what we call a time signature, 4/4, which basically looks like a written mathematical fraction of 4/4. This tells us that there will be 4 pulses per bar. Now in drums and percussion, we use the staff differently than the other instruments do, as we assign each drum of the set its own space or line on the staff, and we look at it like it's more of a diagram that shows you what to hit when. For instance, if we want to write the 4 pulses to be played by the snare drum, we will write 4 notes on the snare space, which in drums and percussion will be the second space from the top. Now these notes are called quarter notes, and they demonstrate 4 equal pulses. There are many types of notes assigned various values that look different from the quarter notes, but we just want to give you a basic understanding of how rhythms are written for drums, and hopefully in the process show you that reading music for drums is actually easier than reading for the other instruments. Now that we have our 4 snare pulses or notes written on the staff, let's play it while counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's try it on the bass drum. There are 2 main ways to play the bass drum. Firstly, we're going to talk about the heel down method. Simply, you take your foot, place it flat on the footboard of the pedal. This is the footboard. And with your foot flat on the footboard, you're going to use your ankle and you're going to push the pedal down with the ball of your foot. This makes the beater go into the drum and gives us our sound. Now the other method is the heel up method. Heel up is you use the ball of your foot, this part, and with the ankle up and using your thigh muscles, more like you're stomping on something, so that's the heel up method. And again, the heel down method. Whichever you find is better for you, that's the one you should start with. Now let's see what the 4 pulses played on the bass drum would look like on a piece of written music. Now you'll notice it looks exactly like the snare drum music, but the bass drum notes are written on the bottom space of the staff. This is typically where bass drums are written. Now let's play the pulse on the bass drum while reading the music. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's time to introduce the hi-hat. Now that we have our hi-hat cymbals, we're going to use a closed hi-hat sound. This is used by simply putting your foot on the hi-hats, pressing the pedal down so the cymbals are touching and making a nice, crisp, clean sound. By loosening off the pressure with the foot, the cymbals will have a looser or more sustained sound. The less pressure you put on the pedal, the more sustained the sound will be, or the longer the sound will be. But for today, we're just going to use a nice closed hi-hat sound. Nice, crisp, clean notes. The hi-hats or any of the cymbals on the drum set are written with X's instead of note heads. Different composers and arrangers will sometimes write the hi-hat notes on the top line of the staff instead of above the staff. We're not going to get too involved with all the different cymbal choices just yet, as we want to get you reading and playing ASAP. Let's try reading and playing the pulse on the hi-hat. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that we're playing the pulse, the next thing we want to talk about is splitting the pulse up around the different parts of the drum set, which is what a drummer is doing when he's playing what we call a beat or a groove. I'm going to count out loud while I play the pulse on the hi-hat. Now I'm going to use my strong hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to use my right hand to play the hi-hats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, with my left hand, I'm going to strike the snare drum on the 3rd beat. So when I count 1, 2, 3, 4. When I get to 3, I'm going to hit both hands simultaneously. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to do that again. On the third beat, both hands hit together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take a look at how this looks written out. So you'll notice that the snare drum and hi-hat are written above each other on the third beat. When you see this, it simply means to strike the hi-hat and the snare at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't have drums and you still would like to work on the coordination to be able to play the drums, here's a real simple way to go about doing it. All you need is your hands and your feet. So on our exercise, what we just played, where we added the hi-hat and the snare together, basically we were teaching ourselves to coordinate our hands on the third beat. So I'm right-handed. I'm going to use my right hand to count all 4 notes. This was what I was using to play the hi-hat, my right hand. Okay, so instead of hitting the hi-hat, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to tap my leg with my hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now my left hand, which in the previous exercise was playing the snare drum on the third beat, or the third hi-hat, is going to also play with my right hand on the third beat simultaneously. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you're left-handed, you probably want to count or play the hi-hat, your counting hand, your hi-hat hand, with your left hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And simply add the right on the third note or the third beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, we're going to add the bass drum to the first hi-hat note, or what we refer to as beat 1. Now I'm going to leave the snare drum out this time, so we can just focus on getting right-handed drummers, their right hand on the hi-hats. Left-handed drummer would be the left hand. And typically, if you're right-handed, your strong foot is going to be your right foot. So since I'm right-handed, I'm going to focus on playing my right foot and my right hand together on the first beat when I count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what this looks like written out. So now we have the hi-hat and bass drum playing simultaneously on the first note. Again, you'll notice that the bass drum and hi-hat are written above each other, or the bass drum is written underneath the hi-hat, which indicates to strike both at the same time. Again, while reading it now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the next step, we were adding the bass drum and the hi-hat, or teaching ourselves to coordinate a right foot with a right hand. We did that on the first beat. So I'm going to count with my right hand, all 4 beats, but on the first beat, I'm going to stomp my foot, as well as clap my hand on my leg. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course, if you're left-handed, left hand and left foot. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're having a tough time getting either of the first 2 steps down, whether it's the first step, which was adding the snare drum to the hi-hat on the third beat, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or the second step, adding the bass drum to the hi-hat on beat 1, or the first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take a few minutes, try it, and if you're still having a tough time, go slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or even slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, it's really important we get those first two steps down before we go to the third step, involving all three limbs.